Hello and welcome to our pattern making class. My name is Frank Lutherloh, and within the next few minutes I'm going to show you how easy it is to make patterns that really fit. This is possible thanks to our pattern making system that was invented in Germany in 1935 and is today translated in 17 different languages. The name of the system is the Golden Rule, and it's based on a mathematical formula which is known as the golden section. This ancient formula states that certain body parts within each person's body relate. Here are a few examples. The distance of your outstretched arms from fingertip to fingertip equals the height of your body. 8 times the length of your head equals the height of your body. The distance from your wrist to your elbow equals your foot length. The circumference of your fist equals your foot length. And if you place your thumb on the second segment of your index finger, you will notice that this is exactly the length of your nose. Many famous artists and sculptors have utilized this knowledge centuries ago. Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo have created many of their masterpieces on the basis of this knowledge. We took advantage of these well-known proportional relationships in the anatomy of the human body and developed a pattern-making system that enables even beginners to make precisely fitted, made-to-measure patterns by using only 2 body measurements. And the 2 measurements are your bust measurement and your hip measurement. I'm going to demonstrate to you now how the system works by making a pattern for a classical vest. As you know, a classical vest is a very fine-fitted and tailored garment, and therefore a very good example to demonstrate to you how accurately the system works. Here you see our pattern designs, the front and the back part for this vest. First, I put a pattern design with some Scotch tape on a sheet of paper. Samantha is going to be our model today. Please, Samantha, lift your arms, please. I'm going to take her bust measurement now over the shoulder blades and over the fullest part in the front. Samantha has a bust measurement of 98 centimeters. And her hip measurement, I also take that over the fullest part in the hip area. That measures 106 centimeters. Thank you. The system works in metric, but as you will shortly see in this case, it's very easy to work with and just a unit of measure. So bust measurement 98 and hip measurement 106 centimeters. In order to make this pattern now, I'm going to use an ordinary centimeter tape measure. On one side of that tape measure, I have a sizing scale attached. This sizing scale is really important, and as you can see, there are 2 sets of numbers on that scale. On the left-hand side, the black numbers from 0 to 8. Now these numbers are the centimeter units that are continued in the yellow tape measure, and they are right now not so important. But then on the right-hand side, you see these little red and black numbers. These numbers start with that little red 50 on the bottom, and then they go in increments of 2, up to that black 140 on top of the scale. These numbers represent bust and hip measurements in centimeters. The colors don't have anything to do with your bust or hip measurement. This means your bust or your hip measurement can be both, either a red or a black number. Now Samantha's bust measurement is 98 centimeters. So I look up that number in the sizing scale, and you can see it's a red number, and I take a pin now and I simply put that pin through the hole that's on the line that points to 98. This is how I fix her bust measurement. Now inside of our pattern design there's a cross. This is a very important point, and this is now where I put that scale with the pin, right in the center of the cross. Now I can rotate the tape measure with the sizing scale freely around the entire pattern design. Now there are lines and numbers that extend out of this pattern design, and I take the scale now and I move it to one of those lines just until the edge of the scale lines up with that line. Then I pull that tape measure nice and straight and I read the number on that line. In this case it's a number 18. This simply means to look up that same number, 18, in the tape measure and to simply mark a dot right next to that number on the paper. Then I bring that scale up towards the next line. Again, I line it up, read the number, 18 again, so I look up 18 in the tape measure, and again I mark a dot right next to that number on the paper. This is really easy. Then I go to the next line, 15, make a dot at 15. then 19, 33, and you can see after I made a few dots, here already the shape for Samantha's armhole, made to her measurement, that is right here in the scale. Then 35, the shoulder section, 36, 37.5. The next number has a little 5 next to it. This means to make the dot at 37 and a half. Now the next line is not connected with the pattern design. This means that the dot to that line is located inside of the pattern. And in this case, it's the dot for the dart. And it works exactly the same way. I line up the scale with that line, 11, make a dot at 11, and this is how I get the dot for the bust dart. Then 19 and a half, and 19. Now I've made all the dots that are located on the waistline and above. And all pattern parts and pieces that are located on and above the waistline are always made with a bust measurement. But if you make pattern parts or pieces below the waistline, it is very important to make those to your individual hip measurement so that the pattern fits. And as you can see, there are 3 more dots now located below the waistline. So I'm going to take out the pin of the number 98, and now I look up Samantha's hip measurement, 106 in the sizing scale. And again, it is a red number in the scale. There's a line that points to that number, and on the line there's a little perforated hole. This is where the pin goes, and I go back in the same center of this cross now that is located here inside of the pattern design. Now the system works to Samantha's hip measurement, and I can make the remaining 3 dots below the waistline at 20, 21, and 26. After all the dots are made, you can see already the shape for the vest pattern. And the next step, of course, is to connect the dots. And in order to do this, I'm going to use a specially developed ruler, which makes connecting the dots very easy. Now this is a fabulous acrylic tailor's curve, and you will shortly see how excellent it works, especially for the curved sections. The straight lines are very easy to draw. You just connect 2 dots at a time. But then for the curved lines, make sure that you line up a minimum of at least 3 dots with this ruler. This way you will end up with a beautifully shaped curved line. See how nicely that armhole looks. Then the shoulder, the neckline, again I line up 3 dots because it is a curved line, and the dart. Remember the dot that was made with the number 11? That's the dot for the dart. And on top of that dart we have that little extra for the fabric. And now I have made a made-to-measure pattern for Samantha. Inside of the pattern design we have several important details which I'm going to transfer now to the pattern. The waistline. This one goes parallel to the bottom line to the dot made with the number 18. Then the center front. This one goes up to the dot made with the number 19 and a half. Inside of this ruler there are 4 different button sizes that will help you to determine the right amount and size of buttons. Then the straight of the grain. This one runs parallel to center front and is indicated by an arrow. Below the armhole there's a letter symbol, A. You will find another A below the armhole of the back part. And these letter symbols will later help you to put the pieces together. And the waist start. Now the waist or your stomach is a variable measurement and cannot be determined precisely. So I'm just going to draw a line where that dot is located, and that is parallel to center front up towards the bust point. And then later, when I fit this pattern to Samantha, I'm going to take in a little bit right here. So now I can take off the pattern design, and where the pin was, I'm going to mark that little hole in the paper. This is a very important point, and I will explain that to you later. Now I can cut out the pattern along the sewing line. Don't forget to add 5/8 of an inch or whatever you're comfortable with for the seam allowance. Seam allowance needs to be added. Now I can fold in the darts. First the shoulder dart. I fold that along the lines. And then the waist dart. I take in right here a little bit. And later then on the fabric you take in as much as you like. This is a variable measurement. And later when you fit your pattern you can determine how much you would like there. Please, Samantha, let's see how this pattern fits for you. Hold one finger right here. Very good. And lift your left arm a little bit. Excellent. And as you can see, this pattern really fits beautifully. The shoulder section is excellent. Center front, neckline, the armhole, no gaps around the armhole. I would just take in a little bit more for her waist start to give her that tailored look. But this is a beautiful fit. Thank you very much, Samantha. Also, this illustration shows very well how differently the pattern can turn out for different measurements, made with the same little pattern design. And it does not matter if you have a commercial size or not. Now for Samantha, also the waist length was just right. However, that's not always the case. Just imagine that there are two people with the same bust and hip measurements, but they are completely different in height. And then you might ask yourself, how is it possible with only two measurements that this pattern always fits? Well, in some cases, you might have to lengthen or shorten the waist. And this is why you should always mark that little hole where the pin was. Because you would draw a line through that cross, parallel to the waist. In case you needed to lengthen the waist, then you would cut your pattern here with your scissors, open it for the necessary distance, splice in extra paper, scotch tape that on there, and connect the lines. If you needed to shorten the waist, then you would do it also right here in the cross by simply folding the pattern for the necessary distance. And you see if you do this right here, then you keep the shape of the pattern. These lines still go parallel. Up here we haven't changed anything. And then this angle, we lifted that up in the waist where it belongs. And that would be the only adjustment that you might have to do here in the length. Also for slacks and skirts, it might be necessary in some cases to lengthen or shorten, and then you would do this right there where the lines go most parallel, and that's usually above or below the knee section. This is how our system works, and in case that you're interested in making other designs for yourself or members of your family, then you can do that with our pattern making manual. In here you find everything that you need to draft your patterns with. Of course, there's also the original tape measure with the sizing scale already attached to it in it. And you will receive a lifelong guarantee on that tape measure with the scale. A pen, 2 pins, and a roll of scotch tape. Then you will find in our instruction part everything explained that I just demonstrated. So in case something is unclear, you can always look that up in the instruction part. Here it shows you how to take the bust and the hip measurements, where to put the pattern design on the paper, how to fix your measurement in the sizing scale, then go right in the center of the cross, on and above the waistline. The dots are made to your bust measurement, and below the waistline always to your hip measurement. How you connect the dots with the tailor's curve, that you make sure you line up a minimum of 3 dots for your curved sections. Then how to lay out your made-to-measure pattern on the material under consideration of the grain line. Don't forget to add the seam allowance. The ease is already built into our patterns, but you have to add for seam allowance. Then what the system is based on, the relationships in the anatomy of the human body. Here talks about additional updates, like every 3 months we have a new seasonal collection that we publish 4 times a year, and you can order these supplements later if you like. Then we have our symbols page. Now this is a very important page right here, because here you find all the letter symbols explained. And in case you're not quite sure what pattern part you're looking at, then you can always look that up right here on that symbols page. Then we have some practical hints for the hobby dressmaker, how to sew on buttons, collars, sleeves, how to fit in pockets, how to fit in sleeves. If you like to knit, we have a knitting instruction in here. Some of our fashions are specially designed for knits or stretch fabrics, and they have a symbol that indicates that. And then the most important part, that's of course our collection. We have 280 different fashions in our manual, and all of these can be made to anybody's measurements. And there is everything in here: slacks, skirts, dresses, blouses, children's and men's fashions, from the bathing robe to the wedding dress, a beautiful variety of different styles. And if you like to make something, just open the manual, take out the page, and on the other side you will find the necessary pattern designs. When you're done, put it back in the system, and you can keep this next to your sewing machine. It doesn't take much room, and you always know where your patterns are. And there are also basic patterns in here and a beautiful variety of different styles that you can choose from. Some of the fashions you can even mix and match and create your own designs with. And even if your measurements change, it doesn't matter. You can always make a pattern to your new measurements with our system. If you know how to sew, then you will be able to make your own patterns with our system. We would be happy if you became another satisfied user of our system, and should you decide to give it a try, I wish you, also in the name of our family, best of success with the Golden Rule pattern system, and happy sewing. Your Frank Lutherlo.